Hi guys, Byron Physiotherapist Scott Thomson here at the Evolve Wellness Center, and today I'm going to be talking about 3 ways you can test for a rotator cuff tear. Now, what the rotator cuff are the muscles in your shoulder that are primarily responsible for your shoulder stability and for a lot of your shoulder movement as well. So they're 4 very small muscles, and they all branch off or have the origin on what's called your shoulder blade or your scapula. And they're sort of the triangular muscles, and they sort of form this sort of triangular shape, and then they turn into what's called tendons. And it's the tendons that then insert into your arm bone, and when the muscle contracts, it pulls on the tendon, kind of like a guide rope, and then that's what then pulls your shoulder in particular directions. So there's one here, there's one nice big one here on the back that brings your shoulder inwards, and there's another one that just runs off the side here as well. And one in particular that seems to be problematic with a lot of people is what's called the supraspinatus, and it runs off this little top part here of your shoulder blade. But the issue with that one is it runs through this gap right here, okay? And this seems to be what the problem is. The tendon comes through and inserts here. So with this gap, it's certainly vulnerable to inflammation, and you can get impingement in the tendon there. You also have a few things called bursas, which are little sacs of fluid that sit under the tendons to reduce the friction. Okay, so if they get inflamed also, you can bash that tendon up and those bursas up there with a lot of repetitive shoulder movement, especially if those muscles aren't conditioned and they're not moving your shoulder very well. So a tear often occurs in the tendon, and there's some different kinds of tears. There's a partial tear, and there's also a full thickness tear, and of course they can vary in sizes. So what we're going to look at today is the 3 signs you can self-test. So this is where you potentially have a shoulder injury from whatever reason, you've fallen, you've played sport, and your shoulder's not feeling great. So the 3 basic tests that you'll find that we'll do as physiotherapists, first one's just called an empty can test. So what this basically is if you bring your arm about 40, say you rise it up just to about 90 degrees like so, and bring your hand about maybe 30, 45 degrees forward like this. You then imagine you're holding a can, okay, and then you want to turn the can facing down, so you're emptying the can, okay? Or otherwise you can just do thumbs up to thumbs down. So what we've done now is we've put the shoulder in such a position that the supraspinatus tendon is going to be loaded up, and ideally get another person to do this to you. If that's completely not available, you can do it yourself, and you're going to put some pressure with your opposite hand onto this hand here. Okay, and then with this pressure, you're going to try to sort of equal the pressure, and you'll find if you can't resist that pressure, the arm will just sink down. Of course, if you've got another person, ideally you'd just test both arms at the same time. The person then comes along, puts their hands onto your arms, applies just not a strong pressure, but just a gentle force that should be enough to just overcome and push you down. And if you can't resist and hold against that pressure and the arm just comes down, it's a good sign that you definitely have some pathology there in that part of your rotator cuff. Now the next very easy test is just a hand behind back test. So all you do is get the problematic hand, you put that behind your back, okay, and then you'll just see if you can lift that hand away from your back. Now if you can't do that without pain, it's probably another good sign that you have rotator cuff pathology. Also, I mean, you also might not be able to get your hand too far like me. I'm a bit tight through my shoulders, but that's okay. We're looking for mostly here pain and weakness. And the last test there that we're going to do is just something even very, very simple. So if you just bend your arm to this position here and then rise it up, and then what we're going to do is let your arm just come down. Now again, if your rotator cuff's not working very well, what you're going to find when you get to about 90 degrees here, your arm is just going to kind of drop down. Okay, that's also a good sign that is not working very well. The rotator cuff's not working very well. One more little test, just as a little bonus here, we'll add it in. If you bring your elbows into 90 degrees, okay, and we're going to look at this movement here, which is called external rotation. And what again you do is you get ideally someone else, just same thing as when you did the empty can test, just resist against your own your arm, and you're going to push this way with one hand and push against it with the other hand. Now, again, if you're finding that's very weak or causing pain, or you're pulling yourself in, it's probably another good sign that you have rotator cuff pathology. Now, what do you do if you have rotator cuff pathology? Well, good idea to go see your physio. So if you're in Byron Bay, certainly drop us a line here and we can assess you further. You might also want to potentially go see a doctor. If it's bad and certainly your pain level's high, there's an old saying, a stitch in time saves 9. Now, if it's a partial tear, you could probably treat it conservatively with physiotherapy, where you want to do, if you came in to see me, for example, we'd do a lot of postural assessment. We'd also look at why the problem occurred in the first place, which is very, very important. And then we'll look at putting you through rehab paces. It can take about 6 to 8 weeks to make a recovery from that. And then a graded strengthening program so that it doesn't happen again. But if it's a full thickness tear or even a large partial tear, a lot of times you might be referred on to a orthopedic surgeon. Certainly go get an MRI if you haven't at this stage, and they might highly advise that you have surgery. Surgery can be quite a long recovery time. That's easily 6 months plus to recover there from surgery. So you certainly want to have the time available to go through that. But again, sometimes it's just those the breaks, as Curtis Blow says. So just so in case you're thinking about not doing anything about it, just a reminder, like any little tear, if you had a little tear like this here, okay, and it's not causing you too much problems, but what happens if you keep putting pressure on the tear, and you'll see that eventually the tear will just get bigger and you'll look at this kind of a rip happening. So you don't want that to happen. So look after your rotator cuff. If you're not getting any pain, then I would highly advise a rotator cuff conditioning program so that this doesn't happen. And certainly if you're 40 or above, you're in a very high risk category to get rotator cuff tears, even if you're just working out in the gym in a regular way. So certainly think about a rotator cuff and shoulder stability health and conditioning program, which we can also help you out here at the Evolve Wellness Center. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope it gave you some useful information, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.